Hey everybody, welcome to this deck tech for Modern Death and Taxes. I just wanted to give an overview of the deck that I'm playing with. I'll kind of mention some of the tricks and things that go on here. Probably won't cover everything, but we'll see what we can look over at this time. Um, so starting out with the land, obviously we have our plains. We've got three tectonic edges, four ghost quarters for some land destruction. Uh, the tectonic edges, you can destroy any target non-basic land. You can activate it if an opponent controls four or more lands. One thing to keep in mind with this is if you've got two out and your opponent has four lands, you can hold priority and activate twice, kind of leaving them down with two lands. So something to keep in mind for that. Ghost Quarter, so this destroys any land. It can be a basic land, but the controller can search their library for a basic land, put it onto the battlefield, and shuffle their library. So you can get rid of any land. This kind of combos with some of the cards that I'll talk about later that are related to stopping the player from searching their library or not searching their library very well. So we'll come back to that. Flagstones of Trocaire. When it goes into the graveyard from the battlefield, search your library for planes, put it onto the battlefield. So just kind of guarding against land destruction against ourselves, I guess. You can, if you're in a desperate situation, Ghost Quarter your own Flagstones of Trocaire and get two planes out of your library. So again, not an essential card, but another one here. And then also another land, I wouldn't say it's essential to play in this, Aganjo Castle. You can prevent the next 2 damage to target legendary creatures. So the legendary creatures here are going to be the Thalias and Mangara. So we'll come back to those, but just so you get a sense. So those are the lands. I would want to play probably a Mutavault here also. Probably taking out one of the planes or maybe the flagstones. It's just really nice getting that out and having another creature potentially available to you. So I would probably put one in here. I just haven't bought one yet. So going on from there, the Ether Vial is probably like one of the key cards in the deck, probably one of the most important, and it just lets you put out all your creatures basically at instant speed based on the number of counters that you have on the vial. You can see kind of the converted mana cost of all the creatures except for the Restoration Angels, which will oh, there they are. Restoration Angels are there. That we'll get to. All of them are either 1, 2, or 3. That's by design so that you can make use of the vial effectively. So definitely, if you can get this out on turn 1, you're usually in pretty good shape. And then Path to Exile. This is our kind of removal spell that we're going to use. Again, this also kind of lets our opponent search for a basic land, but again, we have some cards here that will help make that a little more difficult for them. So that's kind of useful here too. So what's the actual plan of the deck? Well, one path that we have here is making it a little bit harder for them to cast their spells. So we have Thalia here, 2/1 first strike. Non-creature spells cost 1 more to cast. So if we can get one of these out, it's already setting them back, making them use up more of their mana. They're going to have to, their game plan's not going to flow the way that they want it. The Judge is familiar. We can sacrifice to counter an instant or sorcery unless they pay 1. So again, just making that things a little more difficult for them. Also nice just have a 1/1 flyer. Sometimes if you get that out early, you can just ping in for some damage also. So it's not too bad in that sense either. Then as I mentioned before, we have some cards here to make searching our opponent's library a little bit difficult. Leon and Arbiter. Players can't search their libraries. Any player may pay 2 for that player to ignore this effect until end of turn. So one thing to keep in mind is that this affects all players, so this will affect you also. You will also have to pay 2 to ignore the effects if you want to search your library. Um, and in Magic Online, the interface isn't that great. You actually have to right-click on the Arbiter to pay the 2 while you have priority before any kind of activation for searching. Like if you're, using a fetch land or something, you have to pay that beforehand. You don't get prompted. So sometimes people miss that if they're not familiar, just because they're used to kind of being prompted for these different kinds of effects and costs that you have to pay. This will not prompt. You actually have to right click on the creature and pay the cost that way. So something to keep in mind. Uh, there's also Aven Mind Sensor. If this just affects the opponent, does not affect you. Uh, Basically forces them to only search the top 4 cards of their library rather than their whole library. Um, so this is only kind of somewhat useful with things like Ghost Quarter. So Leonin Arbiter is really great with Ghost Quarter. If you get the timing right, basically you can destroy any land and they're not going to search if you play it right. Mind Sensor, they still do get to search the top 4 cards. So if you're using Ghost Quarter, there's a chance they'll hit some land, maybe not the one that basic land that they wanted, but uh, it's also helpful for other kind of spells that they might have that search their library for a particular card, for example, and it makes that much more difficult. So going on from there, first actually, I'll talk about this column here. So these are our kind of flicker effects, creatures that let us uh, exile another creature and kind of bring them back into the battlefield for some purpose. So Flicker Wisp is the kind of, I would say, primary card that enables this, probably the best one, because we can target any permanent. So we can target one of our opponent's creatures, an opponent's land, planeswalker, anything we want to get rid of for until the beginning of the next end step, we can target with Flicker Wisp. But we can also target our own creatures for value, which we'll get into. So going on to the next one here, Eldrazi Displacer. This one is nice because it gives us a repeatable effect. We can pay 3, 2, and a colorless to exile another target creature and return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control. So we can target our own creatures if we want to get some extra value out of them. We can target an opponent's creature if we want to, if they're attacking and we want to, if we target them with that ability, it'll exile the creature, return it back to the battlefield tapped. It's not going to be attacking and not be able to deal us damage. So it's good, targeting your own creatures, also good targeting opponent's creatures. And then we have Restoration Angel. So we can exile another target non-angel creature we control, and then return it to the battlefield. So again, using it to either save a creature from dying or just getting extra value out of creatures we already have. One thing with Eldrazi Displacer is if they target Eldrazi Displacer, let's say with a lightning bolt, its ability can't target itself. It has to exile another creature, but what you can do is, so you can kind of play some games that way if you need to save. And then, yeah, to mention with Restoration Angel, it's target non-angel, so you can't flicker another Restoration Angel. You'll see Sarah Avenger over here. You can't flicker that. If you have a Mutavault, that's been activated as a creature, you can't target that because that's all creature types. So that's just something to keep in mind. And then I talked kind of about how we would flicker some of our creatures for value. So that's what we've got in this column here, we've got Loyal Sentry. So when it blocks a creature, destroy that creature in Loyal Sentry. So this happens uh, when you declare blocks. This trigger goes onto the stack before any damage is dealt. So the trigger goes onto the stack. You can flicker it with one of these creatures. So you can use Flicker Wisp if you have the Ether Vial and can put it out at instant speed, or you can use Restoration Angel or Eldrazi Displacer. You'll save your Loyal Sentry, but the opponent's creature will still die. So it's a way you can kind of repeatedly use that. Acacian Javelineers. So this enters the battlefield with a counter. You can tap and remove a counter to deal one damage to target creature or player. Um, this, again, you can flicker it to kind of get a counter back on it if you want. Not really the best value as far as our options that we have, but if you need to, you can. I also just kind of like this as uh, just a little kind of annoying card. Again, your opponent's going to have to think about their plays a little bit more if they have one toughness creatures or if they uh, attack into something that would, just need 1 point of damage more to die. This would be able to kill it. I can also kill creatures with 2 toughness, so if you block with this, then tap before damage and deal 1 damage to the creature you're blocking, it'll be able to kill it. So just kind of a little utility card. We've got 4 Blade Splicers. So when Blade Splicer enters the battlefield, put a 3/3 colorless Golem artifact creature token onto the battlefield, and then Golem creatures you control at first strike. So this is probably our, well, I would say probably our primary target that we want to, as far as like flickering our own creatures for value. If we can get a lot of 3/3 Golem creatures onto the battlefield, and if Blade Splicer survives, they have for all first strike, so that's just nice for kind of getting damage through. We have 1 Wall of Resurgence, so just a big defender. When it enters the battlefield, put 3 +1/+1 counters on target land. It becomes a 0/0 elemental creature with haste that's still a land. So kind of just gets you value with an extra creature. So if we flicker this, we could put the 3 +1/+1 counters on the same land if it's still alive, giving us like a 6/6. We put it on another land to give us another 3/3. So just kind of can, again, get some extra value out of this. Mangara, we can tap to exile Mangara and target permanent. So while that's on the stack, if you flicker Mangara, you'll be able to exile the target permanent, but Mangara will still stick around. So again, just kind of, it's a little bit slow. It costs 3 mana. You have to wait for the Summoning Sickness to end before you can actually use it. But obviously very versatile in that you can target any permanent. So again, another nice card in there. And then, so over here we have 3 Sarah Avengers. So these don't really synergize with the rest of our plan that we have over here. They're just really good at getting damage through. 3/3 flying, vigilance. So you can't cast them during your first, second, or third terms of the game. If you do get Ether Vial out on turn 1, you'll be able to activate it with when it has 2 counters on it to put a Sarah Avenger out onto the battlefield for your third turn. So you can kind of cheat it into play with the vial a little earlier than you would be able to get it out by casting. So something to keep in mind. But they're just effective at getting damage through and coming through for the win. Yeah, that's the main deck that we have. Looking onto the sideboard, Sunlance, deal 3 damage to target non-white creature. Just kind of a catch-all, remove more removal spells that we could use early. Mark of Asylum, prevent all non-combat damage that would be dealt to creatures you control. So for facing, burn or some, any kind of deck that we think is going to be dealing us damage with spells, we'll probably bring that in. Rest in Peace. Again, obviously, with any deck that's making heavy use of the graveyard, we'd bring that in. Stony Silence, against Affinity, kind of shuts them down if we can get it out early enough. Core Firewalker, against any deck that's playing heavy red. Ghostly Prison, slowing down our opponent if they're going to be, light on mana resources, but trying to pump out a lot of creatures. Oblivion Ring, just kind of a catch-all for, again, exiling any troublesome, planeswalkers or other permanents, non-land permanents. This also kind of combos with uh, Flicker Wisp, so if you cast this, it enters the battlefield, its trigger goes on the stack. If you can vial in a Flicker Wisp, you'll be able to flicker Oblivion Ring and exile one permanently, and then exile another one until this leaves the battlefield. So you just have to make sure to get the triggers done in the right order. But yeah, that is another kind of cool effect you can do. Mirror and Crusader, protection from green and black. Dismember as another removal spell we have here. Sundering Growth. So I'm using this instead of Disenchant, just because we'll have a chance at possibly getting another Golem token. So if we have one on the battlefield when we cast this, we'll be able to get another one onto the board. So that's the reason why I have that in the sideboard. And then Pithing Needle, again, just versatile at shutting down problem cards that can come up. So that's the deck that I'm kind of have now, and we'll be playing for the Modern League that I'll be recording shortly. So hope you guys enjoy this, and thanks for watching.